Okay, thanks.
I see next one.
Can you do the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I can.
Just before, and I know Ginger and Cookie are the only ones here, but just so you know, we're not entertaining questions from.
There's a
Pardon?
couple others.
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see
My
it going. We're not entertaining questions from the floor tonight, but our meeting on Tuesday will be an open, as we discuss it, we'll be able to ask questions and answer from there. Okay, go ahead, Thomas.
All right, so as a recap, the town asked us to solicit RFP for consulting engineers. We brought in, the first group tonight is a team from Barton and Judas. We'll turn it over to them to make their presentation and use the opportunity to kind of review the proposal. The town has seen it for, since you guys have submitted it, and I do know they have a list of questions that they're for you guys for afterwards. I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sure.
All set, John, go for it.
Thank you.
And on the phone are our attorneys, John and Jeff from John Langley
Okay.
and his, okay?
Very good.
Can you hear us, John and Jeff?
I can.
Okay.
John can hear.
Okay, thank
All
you.
Jeff as well.
Very good. Thank you for the opportunity to get down and present to you and answer some of your questions. Appreciate it. So we decided to go a little bit old school tonight and do just a paper, so follow on. A presentation shouldn't take long. The bulk of it, we hope today, is a back and forth discussion. The outline, what we're doing, we'll do some introductions. We'll talk a little bit about DNL, our project team, our project understanding, approach, and what future opportunity might be. From an introduction standpoint, I think I've got an advantage with these guys because I've been before you over the last several months with the effort we did down here for the McGill House. So again, John Cadino with our partner with Judas with me tonight. I have Eric Kahn. Eric is one of our senior vice presidents. He actually is a practice leader, we call it, in the water resources group, which is our water sewer group. Eric is a North Country boy. Again, he most of the time works out of the Watertown office. We got Dustin Clark on my right here. Dustin again is one of our Watertown office guys. Dustin is a senior associate and would be deeply involved in the project. Got Taylor Jennings. Taylor is a Adams boy. I call him almost a Henderson boy here too. But again, one of our water resource engineers working out of the Watertown office. Then we have Mark Budash, another one of our VPs. Mark is with our transportation group, and Mark would be the lead on the County Route 133 assessment.
Water about an hour ago. I wonder if anybody found a cell phone.
I'm sorry, what?
He lost his cell phone left his cell phone at the water. It would be Wendy, and she's not here right now.
Okay.
But she would be in tomorrow morning at what, 9 a.m.?
They're off tomorrow, but if he gives me a number, I'll give it to the guys. Thanks, Thomas.
He's my next door neighbor, so.
Okay.
Small world around here.
Okay.
So I can just give you can just call me. Just give me, yep, okay. Keep going, sorry.
Okay. From a firm background, I think you can see by our proposal, we're a company that was formed actually in 1961. Still privately held, based in Syracuse. And a number of years ago, the firm adopted, the program where we open up these regional offices so that we can gather local talent. I was fortunate to be with BNL in 2012 was when we opened the Watertown office. We are now actually on our third expansion of the office. In fact,
We did get to visit it.
Matt, you guys were there to see our latest expansion. We've enjoyed some great success here in the North Country, and it really kind of proves what a firm like ours can do with attracting good local talent, very, for, to provide services to the local communities. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Pond now, kind of talk a little bit more about the different groups, et cetera, give you a little more detail on the
Yeah.
film itself and kind of moving forward.
And we may have been distracted a little bit back there, but we have Mark Budash. Oh, okay.
I did.
We're good. We're all set. Want to make sure we're all good. All right, thank you. So water resources and transportation are really two of our largest practice areas within Barton and Lejudas. John mentioned we've been around since 1961. We're really a full-service engineering firm, from our water resources, which is water and sewer infrastructure design, transportation, of course, but then we have all the other ancillary groups as well, from facilities when we're designing buildings, asset management systems when you're operating and maintaining the infrastructure, solid waste group as well, environmental, when we have all the environmental compliance, wetlands delineations, ecological studies, site civil design, which is our SBD group, which is a large part of what we do as far as laying out infrastructure. So really a full service firm. And again, with the transportation, this is important because of the County Route 123 aspect of this project. And again, the water resources. As you know, with this project, funding is critical. So we have the moniker of funding first. And when we go into any project, a project is not feasible unless it's affordable. So the funding is on the forefront of all of our minds. It's on the forefront of the town of Henderson's and all the constituents' minds. And with the funding, there's a lot of programmatic requirements that you have to maintain and be aware of and comply with on the funding front. So that's something that B&L is very, very strong with. We've leveraged over $500 million in funding for our clients since, I don't know, about 10 years ago. So very successful at all the funding programs, and the funding programs which we have summarized here that, the town has already secured, which is great. It's a great foundation for this project. So, that's something that we could certainly, we would be involved with in understanding all the requirements and deadlines and keeping tabs on what needs to be done. Low pressure sewer projects is again something that B&L is very strong with. Just a listing of some of our projects that we've done in recent years. We have, close to 500,000 feet of low pressure sewer infrastructure in the ground with some of the area projects, thousands with the low pressure sewer projects. That's typically a step or grinder pump project. Almost a couple thousand units served with the projects that we have either in the ground or underway. So very, very familiar with the idiosyncrasies of projects like this. The unique nature of these projects, you're working in people's backyards, literally. You're interfacing with people individually, understanding, where their plumbing connections are, understanding how they use their yards, their land, understanding where the rose bushes are, where they park the boat trailer. You need to know all that to be able to coordinate all that infrastructure, because there's a lot of logistics involved. And, as the town knows, there's a lot of easements involved, and securing all those and making each homeowner comfortable with what's going on is key. It takes a lot of hands-on, a lot of coordination, a lot of listening. So we're very, very good at that. Another thing I wanted to point out on the next sheet is, we design our own wastewater treatment plants. We don't subcontract that work. That's something that we do in-house. We have our own in-house design team for treatment plants. We don't rely on vendors to do a lot of work. We listen to what the vendors have to offer, but we really have a limited reliance on vendor engineering. So that's when a manufacturer of equipment says, well, we'll put together the design, basically set it all up, and the consulting engineer will incorporate a lot of that design onto their plans. We tend to custom design all of our treatment plants. Less reliance on vendor engineering, less reliance on package systems.
Eric, can I interrupt for a minute?
Yep.
Does that go back to saying that you design the plan and have the suppliers come to you rather than you going to the suppliers to design your plan? Is that kind
Correct.
of it?
We look at what are the design objectives, and we typically will want to open up that infrastructure, that plant, so that multiple equipment manufacturers can supply equipment, and you generate that competition on bid day. And the more folks that you have, either blower manufacturers, aeration systems, dewatering equipment, you try to, you always identify, what is it, the equipment that is probably best, but you also want to make sure that there's competitive options out there in the marketplace. So, and a lot of what we do, the tankage and all that, would typically be cast and place concrete or precast that can be supplied through multiple vendors. Process equipment could be supplied through multiple vendors. Because really it's all about, we want it simple, because you're gonna, as a town, gonna be operating and maintaining this for generations. So it's really important that the design be robust, simple, and with a focus on ease of operation. From here, I'll turn it over to Dustin.
You see our team listed here. You see what looks like a lot of us here today. In this project for the town, I would be the project manager. So I think Taylor would be probably side by side, hand in hand with me on that. And that would be, presence at the meetings. It would be coordination with the town, the staff, the board. We would be, kind of the main contacts. But behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. John is a lot of things. He's our phenomenal resource for us, and he'd be an instrumental part of the team as an advisor internally and externally. Eric is the officer in charge, and then on the transportation side, Mark would lead those efforts, and it would be coordinated through us. So you got kind of a single stream kind of line of contact, and then from there we branch down, and we've got a slew of expertise, both in our Syracuse and Watertown offices that we would see involved in this. So as far as the project and our understanding, we want to meet the town's wishes with that, of course, and perform an evaluation on the current design that you have, but open up and maybe take a step back and just open up, look at the overall picture of what's going on. Look at the solutions that have been evaluated, the work that's been done, grant that's been acquired. You guys have gotten a lot. So you want to be careful stepping back too far and losing some progress that you've made, but also recognizing that it obviously warrants a fresh set of eyes, looking at maybe some different alternatives. So, and then of course the roadway improvements that Mark will speak to in a minute with Pioneer 123. And then as Eric mentioned, we really want to make sure that we've got the focus of affordability. Of course, almost nothing matters if it's not affordable. It's got to be good for the constituents. But that affordability isn't just a one-time thing. That's just not upfront. That's long-term, that's life cycle. That's what does it take to operate and maintain this? How long is that infrastructure gonna last? Are you gonna have to do this again in 30 years and do a complete renewal, asset renewal in 30 years? Or will you be able to do maintenance items in 30 years? How's the access to the equipment that's being proposed? What's the impact to the property owners? We wanna make sure that that's all accounted for, a pretty heavy eye, long-term. Not just to get the project to happen, but you gotta be careful not to kind of sway your decisions and make it a little bit easier now, because you're just making it hard for the next guy. So, and sometimes those discussions can be hard, but they're worth having. So we want to make sure that, we integrate that in with our overall approach. So, public outreach, as Eric mentioned, you're really up in people's backyards. I mean, you're to the doorstep. So the outreach, the public involvement is so crucial. And at the end of the day, I boil it down to gaining the trust of the public. They need to know and be confident in the board and your team that you're making good decisions on their behalf. We're all working for them. We all are. So got to make sure that outreach is integrated in every step of the way. I'll turn over to Mark to talk about the kind of 123.
Thank you, Dustin. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you what, your issues are out there on the County Route 123. I mean, you can drive down there today, you can drive down there in the winter, you can drive down there in a rainstorm. You're gonna see what the issues are. I mean, there's obviously drainage issues that run almost the entire length of the county route. Because of those drainage issues, there's also pavement issues. There's installation of pipes that we're using as outfalls have created issues within the pavement itself. There's settlement throughout the corridor. There's shoulder drop-offs. There's crumbling of the pavement across almost the entire length. So I'm here to reassure you that this is something we do all the time. Every project that we do on the transportation side of things has something to do with pavement. Evaluations, we do a full pavement evaluation when we go into, whether it's a full depth reconstruction project or whether it's a pavement rehabilitation project, which is basically taking off a certain amount of pavement and putting fresh new pavement back. We're gonna look at, evaluating the entire length of the corridor. We're gonna use standards that have already been set by the New York State Department of Transportation in their comprehensive pavement design manual. You're gonna see that from, it's something that we're very familiar with. We work very closely with the New York State DOT, all the regions, especially 7 and 3. So, we're gonna evaluate this wholesale. We're gonna put our engineering judgment into the decisions that we make. We're gonna come up with a cost estimate of what the repairs are gonna cost to do. We work very closely with the Water Resource Group on a lot of these Dig Once projects, a lot of the water resource projects they do. They have to work in the roads. We work with the work zone traffic control that they do. We work with the pavement rehab details that we have to do, the trench details that we have to do. So, as much as they're evaluating the cost of some of these sanitary and sewer improvements, they're gonna have an impact on the road. So we're gonna look at the roads separately, then we're gonna bring in their evaluation of where, what kind of pipe is gonna be needed. And then we're gonna put those together and we're gonna come up with a comprehensive look at what pavement rehab needs to be done. I've looked at this, I first started looking at this corridor back in the wintertime. I saw the icing issues that are there. I saw the water coming across the pavement. Obviously you have a high elevation on one side, you have the water on the other side. So water's going in one place and it goes across the road. There's several needs for new drainage structures. There's ways to expand some of the existing swales that are out there. Obviously, new outlet points are probably going to be needed across this corridor. That's going to affect the public, the adjacent property owners that are there. Dustin hit the nail on the head is that, we have to gain the trust of the property owners. And the improvements that we're going to make to County Route 23 is not only going to improve the road, it's also going to improve their property abutting up to that road. Hopefully help with their driveway access, hopefully, their parking access. we can, taking that step back, as Dustin kind of said, and looking at this wholesale, some of these improvements that, could be recommended both on the drainage and pavement side might help with the parking situations that are down there. It might expand that road, square footage enough that, parking may be a little simpler. You fix some of that shoulder drop offs, the swales, maybe you enclose some of that. So we're gonna take that overall comprehensive look. We're gonna put it into a engineering report that's gonna be submitted to the town to review. It's gonna have cost estimates, gonna have standards and guidelines that justify the decisions that we're making. And it's all gonna be, backed by the professional and engineering judgment that B&L brings to a project like this. So we look forward to, working with the town on this, and, we really see this as a very important project for the town and their interactions with the county. And, we're hoping to be part of it, so.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess we're ready for questions.
Go ahead, Lindsay. Lindsay's put together a series of questions for us, and then anybody can jump in and go from there with.
So I'll start. So probably the most important question to me, how do you develop and manage project schedules to ensure timely completion and report outs to us? So what do you use to manage project schedules? What software are you using? Start with that.
So we use, it's a pretty simple, we have a variety. It can be project specific. Our standard, we have a project management plan that we do internally.
Okay.
That's just a Microsoft Word document, Microsoft Excel, Gantt charts. We've used Microsoft Project. We've used proprietary, more expensive, where you actually purchase a license. But I think the important thing is that you use something.
Mhm.
And you talk about the schedule, you develop out the schedule. Something that's worked really well for us to communicate that and keep that as, upfront in the discussion is, kind of an informal standard of ours is every board meeting, we'll provide you a board update memo, is what we call it. And it's just an update to keep you guys abreast of exactly what's going on. If there's impacts to the schedule, what's been done, what's upcoming, what are the board's actions needed, what are our deliverables that are coming up, any changes. And that's important for everybody's standpoint. And again, to keep the public informed too. It's a public document, you share it, invite questions, and it's always a good avenue to invite discussion on the project.
Yeah, and part of our invoicing too, our monthly invoicing, we'll provide, we can provide progress reports along on that too. I mean, I'll go right on top of what, Dustin said in regards to the board memo and stuff like that, but we can provide those also.
Perfect. How about budget tracking then?
I think,
Is
so
that gonna
our
happen?
budget or project budget?
Project budget.
So project budget tracking, that's something that, you're doing it now. We're gonna go through the engineering evaluation, you're gonna do that. We try to keep tabs on that, identify some milestones throughout the project to make sure that you're on par with that. I say it's ongoing though. If the industry changes, we generally hear quite a bit ahead of time. We get some heads up from suppliers, hey, that hurricane that just hit, there's a resin plant in the Gulf, that's gonna affect pricing. We don't think it's gonna happen for another 6 months, but it's like, okay, here we go, keep track of that. And if that is enough to warrant relooking at it, then you relook at it. But it's really not, I wouldn't want to commit to saying you do it at certain steps because I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I think what's important to us is just past experiences. It hasn't been communicated. Either the project schedule slips in the schedule, budget slips in the budget. So we just want to be very, very clear that has to be visible, and we have to have communication not only for ourselves but for the public. Is that there is visibility, we get it, I get it. I think we all get, there's gonna be changes. We've got to make sure that we know about them.
It's the monthly bill that says $5,000 versus the monthly bill that says $5,000 with the things that were done throughout the month.
So-
That's all we're looking for,
Yes.
to make sure that
And
we can tie them
one
back.
thing we commit to, is we commit to a presence at pretty much every board meeting.
Okay.
During the project, one of us will be here for the update, to answer questions, talk about schedule, talk about budget, talk about upcoming changes, et cetera, that we see. And again, we commit to that. And that's not necessarily part of the charge. It's the way we manage projects, and it's the way we communicate with not only the board, but also with your constituency. So,
We've got some interesting experience with John Lange in project in the town of Constantia. That's, I'll say it's survived COVID, but there's been a lot of uncomfortable discussions that we've had to have because costs kept going up. We saw the writing on the wall, we bring it to the board. We don't want to tell you that news, but it's our job to. Bring it to,
We just want the news.
yes,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah. Okay. You can probably mute him.
I think he unmuted himself.
I think he unmuted himself. John, are you talking?
No, I did. I just unmuted myself. That was all.
Okay, thanks.
Do you want me to keep going? And then you can-
I did. I just want to say that the legal costs did not go up. I want to be clear on that.
Of course.
Thanks, John.
So,
For once, the
For
legal
once.
costs didn't
I
go
think it was really great what you said about gaining the public's trust, and I think that's a really, really important thing for the town of Henderson. So you talked about having that. Can you give me some specific examples maybe, or how you would go about doing that?
Well, it starts right here. It's the interaction at the board meeting with, unfortunately, the few members of the public, thank you for coming, that represent the hundreds that are affected. It's always frustrating because you wish you could just have a conversation with everybody, but you can't. So it starts here and kind of word spreads. The worst thing is misinformation. So the more information you can get out there, mailings, you have to be very intentional about any mailings. You don't want to do too much where people ignore it, but not enough where they don't feel like they have information. When you're out and about integrating with these projects, you're integrating with every single property owner, every single one. Have to be. You need easements from them, you need to figure out where to put it. You have the prime opportunity to go there fully prepared with good information, accurate information, not tell them what they want to hear, tell them the true impacts. I love it when people ask me, is this project is it gonna make a mess in my yard? Yes, it is. It 100% is gonna look like a bomb went off in your yard. But it's our job to make sure that it looks perfect when it's done. At least what it looks like now, if not better. In the contract, it's our job. You're paying us to enforce that.
And when we're out in the fields, looking at the drainage and everything, obviously the drainage is coming from property owners. So we are going to, as we look at, when we're out there doing the pavement analysis, as we're out there looking at the drainage areas and stuff, we will have conversations with the property owners to, find out what their problems are, find out, what they have, coming into the system, where they, where the water is coming from behind their house and stuff like that. So we're gonna have those in the field conversations also to, gain that trust and, get a better understanding of what we're looking at.
You've done a really good job of explaining yourselves and your team. Will we have one person that, when I got a question to ask, one person? Okay.
Yes.
I think
And
that's
I'll say,
important.
I like to say me or Taylor or John, just in case.
Right,
But yes, you have my cell phone.
But I will.
We're gonna have my business card. You'll see it's my cell phone. It's right here.
Yeah.
Um,
but I think that's important because if I go to Taylor, or I go to Eric, or I go to
no, it's
It's
okay.
gonna be Dustin.
Thank you, Dustin.
What challenges do you see with this project?
public.
Public. Okay. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, all of the
I can
things.
probably get the gist of what you mean, but I'd like to hear.
It's a cost. It's the cost. if it was free, this would be so easy. You're doing it, it's the cost. You're taking, money away from people. So, it just garners all these questions about, is this cost accurate? There isn't a great history of the project.
Yeah.
So you got some ground to make up. Trust. So, that information, we are very fortunate because I didn't work on every one of these projects that were listed on here. None of us here worked on every one of these projects. We have 80 engineers in our water resource department. Mark has how many engineers in transportation? 40. We have resources that we get to benefit by pulling from their knowledge. So we have really good explanation, justification for our estimates, for our judgment that we bring. And that's the hardest, that's what I see as the hardest part. And it's really the hardest part on every project, except for those 100% grant funded projects, which you have to be a part of.
So then even, looking at like all the easements that are required on a project like
Yeah.
this. I know the town struggled with that. On our low pressure projects, when we're especially funded projects where we're going right to the house, you need to get an easement for that funded piece. We equip our engineers with notary. So they go through the notary exam, they have notaries, so they were able to notarize easement documents, standing right there with the homeowner, identify any specific concerns, that gets documented. Any questions that the homeowner has, a design engineer working on the layout of that connection isn't in a position to answer those questions and make those adjustments right in the field. Get those easement plans notarized and executed. And it's just such a time saver, it's seamless. It gets rid of the miscommunication, the chasing people around. It's just one of those things that we've implemented over the years just because we've done these projects. How can we do it better? And that's just an example of one of the things that we've done over the past several years.
Lindsay, let me see, and it just, Dave has
go
some
ahead.
questions, so let's kind of move down here so we're not running out of time and.
Yeah, so within your organization, what kind of internal review process do you have? Like, do you have somebody who's independently set aside, he hasn't been involved in the development, that when it's all done, he can look at it independently and sign off that, yeah, this system is designed properly? The reason I ask is the STEM system that was designed originally here was flawed. It wouldn't have worked. A number of properties would have routinely frozen up because it wasn't deep enough. And that was not identified by the design firm. It was identified by a committee we put together with residents that questioned it. And lo and behold, the design was flawed. So what do you do to prevent that, where you can find that in-house?
I think the biggest thing is just the experience and the experience putting these systems in, putting in the infrastructure, and knowing that when you have a discharge pipe with a little bit of Armaflex on it, it's gonna freeze. The infrastructure that we would design, especially in a seasonal area, you got wind coming off the bay, it's highly susceptible to freezing, and that has to be a consideration. So we have multiple, at B&L, we have our QA/QC process, which is great, but fundamentally, it goes through multiple layers of responsibility at B&L, from the designers to the managers that are helping pull everything together and have a set of eyes on it. Then ultimately, the ceiling engineer, in this case, it would be me, to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's crossed on the project.
Yeah, I mean, mistakes get made, right? Humans make mistakes, so.
No design is perfect.
Right, so
But
again, that's what I'm looking for. Is there, some method that you would catch that person who makes it, the error? Because an error will be made
Yeah,
somewhere.
we have a QA/QC manual within B&L that's constantly being upgraded. I can talk on the transportation side of things and the water resource side. We have QA/QC managers that will take a look at these designs outside of Eric, who would be stamping anything on the water resource side. on my end of the thing, on the transportation side, I'd be stamping it. I rely on my QA/QC manager to be looking at this ahead of myself looking at it. So, and he's not involved in the project. He, as you mentioned, he'd be looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. Every project we do, you can sit there and work on it for months upon months, and you're gonna get bored with, not bored's not the word, but you're gonna keep seeing things over and over and over again. You gotta get complacency.
Yeah.
You gotta get somebody out there that has a fresh set of eyes to look at something, and that is a process that we have developed within.
Okay, so there's an independent sign off.
Yes, we actually have a QA/QC checklist also that goes. The project manager checks it off, QA/QC manager checks it off. The signer, myself, the project engineer who will be stamping it, will also sign off on it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys also, before those plans actually go out, the final stamping, you do what you call a page turn, right? You sit and you go through each page one last time to say, is everything on here okay?
Okay. So a whole separate question. I noticed in the proposal, you talked about the step system, you have experience with the step system. And then, there's a page here with 30 towns that you've worked with. So how many of these towns have installed a step system that you've worked with?
So I'm also responsible for our Buffalo Water Resources office. We have a handful of clients out that way with step systems that we're doing some improvements to. I grew up in a house with a set step system, so I'm familiar with the nooks and crannies of a step system. They have their advantages, but most of the systems that I have experienced that I've seen are traditional step systems where it's a precast concrete septic tank and a precast concrete step tank and a small cast iron step pump, everything below grade, 4+ feet. What was proposed here is a little different. I haven't come across the Aranco systems up here. So we have experience, but typically B&L, when we do low pressure, we do grinder pumps. Mainly because when people want a municipal sewer system, you don't want to kind of have a half measure where half your treatment is you still have to pump out septic tanks. And then also once you do step systems, it limits the ability to do a lot of, your treatment plant is not designed for conventional wastewater, it's designed for step. So it precludes gravity extensions, additional, maybe a commercial area that is well suited for gravity or well suited for grinder pump. It really precludes that because you're not set up for that at the plant.
So when you look at the one aspect of the proposal is not only look at step, but look at anything, right? We've got quite a bit of funding. Is it possible to have another design or a hybrid design?
That's that redesign piece, right?
Yeah,
That's what
that we
you have,
can
yeah. Evaluate current.
Get the price down within something we already have.
And when we look at an area like this, you have a lot of in typical short, waterfront area, it's often the case that it's very congested. There's not a lot of room. And what room people have in their yards, they're using it, right? To park in the boat or whatever, park in their car. We want a solution that really minimizes the amount of disturbance, the amount of footprint required. And a grinder pump has a diameter like this, and from a constructability standpoint, a contractor can precast in all the ballast concrete in those grinder pumps, set them very quickly. They can connect them close to the point of connection on the house because you don't need to have a septic truck access, right? So you don't need to pull the step tank out where it's accessible anymore. The grinder pump can be in the back of the house. You're not putting gravity piping around the house like what's proposed in a lot of cases here.
Okay, and then kind of separate, just a follow-up, what I think I heard you say is you have some kind of strategy that optimizes the easements, so there's less easements or it's less impactful.
No, probably not less easements, but it's getting boots on the ground that are able to answer questions that people have and be able to make people comfortable and then facilitate the execution of the easement documents. Not that we'll be able to get all of them in the field, but we can get about 85, 90% of them done in the field upon our site visits. And the rest of them we gotta work through. And then obviously there's homes that are maybe stuck in probate or things like that, it takes a little bit of time to resolve.
I'm all done, thanks.
Okay, I got it, and Thomas may tell me this isn't a question for you guys, it's more of a question for Thomas, but when we put the RFP out, we presented you with what we had and where we were to this date. So how do you see that supporting where you're going in the future? So we're not going to redo the things that we've done up to this point as far as the drawings and the research that we've done. You're taking that and then you're going to enhance it and help us better understand where to go with the next project? Am I on the same page?
That's the goal,
Okay,
is to use as much as you possibly can of all that hard work that you've already done and years of
years,
that you've had to have into it.
yes,
But still taking a step back,
correct.
and it's going to change. I think that's clear. That change is going to take change to the drawing, change to engineering.
There are a couple
Reach out.
things that we can't, like, we know we can't change the district, correct? Thomas, we have to stay within the district that we're in.
Well,
Can we expand it then?
Hold on, I want to hear more about this.
yeah, I say can't, I don't like hearing can't. I mean, I'm sure there's nuances to the funding. Every funding program has very specific do's and don'ts.
Okay, so keeping within our funding, or the
Our
funding
guideline.
guidelines that we have currently, we would have to do some significant work to change our district.
That I would be convinced.
This is John Lange.
This is
The answer is yes. To change the boundaries of the district, it's certainly to retract it is very difficult. You'd have to go to the legislature, but to make it larger, you're probably not going to do it in a process like this because you've already formed it. There's procedures you have to follow. You'd have to know why you'd want to add more. You'd have to see why it is you'd want to do this, and you'd have to look at it from various angles. And I know we're going to be talking to our bond counsel in the future. And that's another thing we should discuss, whether that's something that's viable. But that's a critical thing for these engineers to know. How many units are they dealing with? How many EDUs are we going to have on this project? So that should be sorted out soon. But typically, you do not make this any larger than it is unless you're doing a separate project.
Okay, thanks, John. So we're all on the same page?
Yeah.
At least today?
Yeah.
At least with what we have today. And you are aware that we have a significant amount of our easements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like how you're thinking. Like, I think we need to think outside the box and look at this thing and be like, how do we make this work? Because the path that we've been going on is not working. So
Yeah, and
you
I
guys are
guess,
here because we need a change.
and I guess that's why I'm like all 100%, 110% respect to John. John is a fantastic attorney, and I'm so glad that he's on the team. But sometimes it might take doing something that is very difficult to do, or take a little bit of undoing to do something that makes sense and makes it work. I'm not saying I'm convinced one way or another.
Okay.
I'm just saying I wouldn't rule it out. If that's the difference between a project and not a project, then it may take looking at what that looks like. We may come back exactly to this point. Yep, that just doesn't make any sense. We're gonna proceed as is.
Thank you.
I have a
Matt,
pretty
go ahead.
specific question on some of the language, and I don't know if you guys have it in front of you, but task number 2 is the alternative sewer system design evaluation. Item number 3 reads, review and evaluate one alternative new treatment plant location and one neighboring municipal treatment plant location for treatment of collection system flows. Can somebody, I don't know who that's best directed to, but elaborate on what
John looks like he
that
wants.
means?
I'm gonna let these guys jump. We have had some internal discussions, but I don't know, Dustin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you saw that. In a lot of cases, we've had more success with projects and project complications in making the project more complicated.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
simple is not always better.
Yeah, so in that mind of taking a step back and just looking at the broader picture here, you can go 5 or 6 miles, 7 miles in a couple different directions, and you have an alternative to not constructing your own treatment plant. And we think that it would be worth looking at. I have no idea if that means anything. We think it would be worth looking at.
So like tapping into the Sackets Harbor one or something? Just an example.
Yeah,
Just an example,
Yeah.
right, or
Right.
building a somewhat regional plant in collaborating with a neighboring community. These guys have been very successful, kind of, when you talk about thinking outside the box, really thinking outside the box.
I know the state likes that when you're working with another town.
And they do, and they do with the funding agencies, like that. So again, as Justin put it directly, sometimes you make it a little more complicated, but you end up with a better project, not just for your community, but maybe even a neighboring community. Makes it better for the community as a whole.
Yeah, be careful, because you can overcomplicate things.
I got it.
Make something out of a molehill. Like,
That's really keeping a, wide open mind and saying, let's look at everything. And we actually, we do that. We'll just literally take a map and just start, well, wait a minute, this is only 5 miles away. What about over here? Just as a thought.
In a lot of our projects, that's what we're doing. We're getting rid of small treatment plants and going to regional solutions.
Right.
So it's always good to take a step back, especially here, the discharge point of Stony Creek, it's intermittent stream standards. It's tight limits. Then you have tight limits, and I noticed it's a 70-degree effluent temperature too. So you might even be looking at having to cool your effluent to discharge to that creek. So it's an option, but I think there might be other options on the table too that.
If
So
you did a
warrants looking
regional
to-
type of environment, is there additional funding out there because we're doing a regional?
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
there's.
IMG and there's other
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
programs.
There is.
So just to make sure, I get the idea of a regional approach or a neighboring community. And then one of the other alternatives would be within our town, so there's basically gonna be,
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're doing a full evaluation of all three of these, but there's at least gonna be a look at where it is now,
Right.
somewhere else in town that makes sense strategically, and then somewhere else maybe outside of town. Sure.
And that would be really driven, the one somewhere in the town alternative would be driven by discharge parameters. If we could have more of get rid of the intermittent stream standards or site restrictions there.
That one caught my eye, so I appreciate the insight.
I'm glad.
That's why we put it in there.
It's small print.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other substantial questions that we need to get answered, Matt? Anybody? No. Okay, anything from us? We good, Thomas? Did we cover
Yeah, I think
everything?
the only other thing that underneath that task I would call out is you guys talked about the collection system, but you did in there make mention of different treatment technologies.
Different treatment technologies, not an engineer, okay? But, and I think you addressed it a little bit, this idea of the step system has a very different, treatment need, at the facility than, a grinder pump would. How much of that drives, I guess what I'm asking is which one comes first? In other words, if we're only treating the effluent under the current step system, we're not processing solids for the most part, right? We're doing a different type of treatment. Do you try to drive this by understanding what type of treatment you want to do or what type of collection you want to do?
I kind of think it step back and you look at the town and does this represent the initial service area for the town's sewer system? Or is this a once and done? Is this never going to grow? Is this going to be it for sewer in the town? My suspicion is that over time, it could grow, right? And you're going to have extensions. You don't want to hamstring yourself with a technology that really isn't well suited for growth.
Okay.
Step system's fine for a subdivision. It's contained. You're not going to see a whole lot of growth. You're not going to have an extension, a sewer extension where maybe, where it makes a lot of sense to have a traditional gravity sewer extension. You want the treatment plant to be able to handle that. Additionally, we're working with a lot of communities, especially down in Maryland, because we have a Maryland office, where communities are now having to replace their step tanks and their step systems. That's a lot of work. And that has to happen every 20 years or so. Your financing on this project is 30 plus years. So you're gonna be in a position where you're kind of gonna be backwards. So we wanna make sure that we're identifying technology that's gonna last the length of your bonding, right? And you're not gonna have to spend money fixing that equipment out in people's yards, pumping out tanks and all that. It's a lot easier sometimes to have that preliminary treatment instead of in the step tanks in people's yards, have that happen at the plant. And then that allows that plant to expand in the future if you need it to expand, which odds are you will.
There has to be a significant cost, and Thomas, you could tell me, maybe it was there and I didn't find it, but what the cost is to maintain this, because we're gonna pump those tanks, right? So did we
Correct.
include that in any, did you,
So it's part of,
is this part of their, will this
Yeah,
be
in
part of the
there.
requirement
in the life cycle cost analysis that
they're gonna do? Okay,
takes in both factors. There's the
Okay.
capital, building it, and then the O and M. So they do, that is mentioned in there, and actually on page 4 at the top, it's operational costs right now.
okay, thank you.
One last thing, I guess, back on 123. Is the hope here, I mean, I guess, I don't know the whole history, maybe I should, but in terms of how we got here right now with the county. But there was a dollar value, there was this much road mileage traded and stuff like that. I mean, is your goal to just come up with a number? And I know that we can't always hold you to a number and that's a starting point or whatever, but none of us are qualified to say, hey, that's what we need.
That's
for
why
the
you're hiring
county.
us to do that.
And you're comfortable in putting that number down and,
100%.
okay,
We do that, yeah, I mean, we have to do that for every project we do. We have to put a cost estimate in. You know, whether the work is implemented, the next year is one thing. If it's implemented 10 years down the road, yeah, obviously there's gonna be a price
Right.
escalation.
but that number, is in my head at least, has to be somewhat independent of any other, sewer project. I mean, we're talking about the road as it stands today.
Right. That's why, that's why I mentioned that, we're gonna evaluate this road separately.
Okay.
Then we're also gonna look at it and say, okay, if we have the entire length of the road, we have to trench this, a sewer pipe down the entire length of the road, 4 foot wide for the entire length. That's gonna be work that needs to be done anyway, so there'll be a different line item there. So we'll give you a menu of how this breaks down, but we are holistically gonna look at County Route 123 by itself. Then we can have menu items that will then bring in sewer thoughts.
And we're looking at this obviously through the lens of a sewer project.
Yep.
I live on that road and some of the other ones, some of my other colleagues up here do as well. There's a lot of other problems, right? I mean, pedestrian stuff, safety, parking, right? One of the things on our questions is scope creep, right? And I don't want to get into that too much, but at the same time, if we're having a PE look at this, what's the opportunity in there to at least understand some of the possibilities moving forward to address those?
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's something that we could look at. Like I kind of mentioned that, if you look at some of the pavement improvements that are out there, the drainage improvements, that could implement, parking improvements, that could implement.
But is the document, I guess, gonna reflect that, or is
It
that?
could, yes, there's no reason it couldn't.
Kickoff meeting, Matt, like there'll be a kickoff meeting before they start this. And those Mike had kind of in their presentation, they had both parking improvements, like the pedestrian access, if that's something that's important to the town, that's when you call all those things out. So they hit it the first time around.
Okay. Yeah, I don't wanna do over. I don't wanna hit you at the 11th hour. I just.
No, and, and my understanding is the right of way is pretty wide down through there.
Yeah.
Which, that goes back to the Jason property,
Yeah.
there's an imaginary line there, and I don't care whoever you talk to in this whole world, they think that's their property.
Yeah.
And it's not, but we have to be cognizant that they feel like that's their property.
Right.
So, we have to keep that in mind as we evaluate exactly what you're talking about.
And I don't know if this is clear, but we don't want the road, right? We think we have to do this because that's where the sewer mains were going. So thinking outside the box, if you can get to the point we don't need to own that road, I think we'd all be very happy.
I think, yeah, that's a valid point.
So when you make this
That's good to
design,
know.
if it's,
Yeah. Oh,
there's a
do you
lot of
wanna own a
value
road?
to.
I do not, that's why I do.
No, this was negotiated prior, but we've not committed to that, so that's.
100% on the design.
That's a
Based on
really
this
important clarification that Dave made, I think.
Yeah, we can get the design and we don't need it to get onto the road. We'd be very happy.
Right, and that's, I guess,
Simplify things a
right, and the
lot.
county's basically saying if you're gonna put the sewer down the road. we
You
don't
gotta
want
own it.
Yes,
No, there's other places where they're letting us cross the road that we don't have to own, right? But
I'll let you guys.
Okay. Good, Thomas?
If you guys are, yeah, I think I.
Thank you.
I know.
This was fantastic.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
No, thank you for the time.
No, we enjoyed
Good
it.
to see you all
Appreciate it.
again.
Yeah,
thank you.
Very great. Your transportation.
Thank you.
I just want his card.
Oh, you can have this one too.
I want.
You want Dustin's card?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We've been looking for another
Thank you.
good job.
Thank you very much. I'm kidding, I'm here.
You guys did. Thank you.
But he's the one you're gonna be calling. He's gonna be the face of the project.
Thank you very much.
All right, good, thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Good seeing you.
Always good to see you again.
John, thank you. Thanks for coming down.
Thanks, see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Taylor. So do you want a break or do you want
I'm good.
Appreciate it, thanks.
Let's roll.
Thomas and Taylor can,
We're ready. Round two.
Yeah, if you know, they drop it in minutes. Are they here? They're not here yet.
then you can take a break.
Just remember that we are,
Matt, to answer your question,
Yeah, correct.
Wendy brought these.
Do you want me to mute it?
oh, so there was a handout, but Wendy never gave
I gotta unmute okay, you now are on TV. Go ahead.
Start myself. So I'm Corey Reed with BCA Architects and Engineers. I'm principal at the firm and the primary point of contact.
I'm Hartley Bonesteel-Schweitzer, and I'm a community outreach coordinator for BCA.
I'm Eric Thompson. I'm with the Popey Design Group, and I'm the manager of the Highway Design Division.
My name is Matt Higgins. I'm a wastewater engineer from Labella Associates out of Rochester.
I have a little question that maybe you could explain the division in your company so that everybody must have a different role. So maybe being the marketing, you can help us what that is.
I'd love to. And actually, we go over that on our that we passed out. I think we can start kind of page 2, our introductions, our team structure, because that's certainly a component that we thought long and hard about. You have kind of 3 complex issues that are in front of you. And when we thought about this, we thought the best approach would be kind of a coordinated approach across 3 firms that really could do a deep dive into each of these problems specifically. All 3 of our firms have a wastewater and a transportation department, a full department, but you're getting kind of highlighted like super teams from each of the 3 firms. But we also want to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to have this be an administrative nightmare for you to deal with 3 separate firms, with 3 separate contracts, with 3 separate computations, billings, coordination. So BCA would act as kind of the overarching coordinator. Casey or Corey would be the one who coordinated all that, was the project manager for the whole thing. So really, you're getting a combined 91 years of experience between the 4 of us at the table, and that's not even including all of the people that we have kind of back behind us that are on the team. Corey, do you want to go in a little more detail about kind of the 3 different approaches?
Yeah. So I mean, to build off that too, I mean, we believe there's a synergy with 3 of us together. Like, we've all gone through transportation and wastewater stuff, we can build off, ask each other questions, and have more thought process and details on that. But as far as what our proposal mentioned, BCA was going to take a look at the collection system, do that analysis, look for functionality, O&M costs, life cycle costs, to enhance competitiveness. And then Labella was going to take a look at the wastewater treatment facility, looking at all those same reviews, and then hopefully it's going to do the County Route 123. Also, hopefully it has an added benefit as well because they meet MWB requirements. They're a NBE firm as well, so it helps those goals that the funding agencies are going to pursue funding, for this analysis to help meet some of those goals.
Does that help answer that question, or?
It does.
You can keep rolling to the presentation.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I think we can go to the next page.
Yeah. So first of all, why this moment matters. There's a critical point in time for the town of Henderson. You've gone through a lot of work to get where you are today, and what's the path moving forward? And we want to give you the best informed information so that you can make the decisions you need to move forward, with the project, whatever may become out of it. But that's our overall goal. And, I know the town has been looking at, sewer systems since the 1990s when some of the first letters from DEC came out, and it's been a long time coming. So, and you have a very impressive funding that you've received already. I mean, you've got 5 or 6 different funding agencies you've got money on, and, hopefully whether you can build onto that to add some more funding for some gaps, some new opportunities come up, or potentially if somehow the scope can be reduced, or competitiveness for when it's out to bidding to reduce costs so it fits the funding that you have. Those are all things that we'd be looking at moving forward.
We really want to get you actionable answers, right? We know you're impatient to get started. We know you've been working on this for a long time, like Corey said. So we want to move you into solving not only today's problems, but setting you up for the future, which is something we know you're already doing with your comprehensive planning process, as well as your New York Forward applications. So commend you on that, and think like this could be a great time to have that kind of multi-pronged approach toward the future, utilizing this kind of review of your systems.
And I guess if there's questions as we're going through this, feel free to ask, or if you want to wait to the end. I try to keep this as brief as possible so there's enough time for Q&A as we move forward. So the next page, project approach. Our understanding, as town's gone through design, went out to bid, and unfortunately, the bids exceed the budget, and that funding won't allow you to move forward currently. In the RFP, there was 3 deliverables that we're supposed to be looking at. Taking a look at the existing system that's under design, looking at an alternate system, and then obviously the County 123 is a big impact too, because most of the force mains or sewer gravity lines are going to be in the road and tearing that up. And my understanding is the county wants to give that to you if you move forward with the project.
Nice way to put it.
Again, as part of your alternate design, we'd love to not have to. If somehow we can get the design that we don't have to get into the road, we'd love for the county to keep it.
Yeah. Yep.
So as we work through alternate designs, that would be a great advantage.
Okay. So a little bit, so our project approach, so like I said, DCA is looking at the collection system. Just our initial observations, thanks for sending us all the documentation. And we looked at the PR, some of the design plans. And, some of our initial observations, as we just went through that, again, if we were successful, we'll definitely take a deeper dive. But a few of the things that just kind of popped out a little bit is some of the O&M costs. They're in there, but it's hard to discern like the septic tank pump outs that are going to be required for the system. There's a cost in there, but it's a monthly cost per EDU. It was hard to pull out, are they going to be pumped every 5 years, 10 years, 15 or 20 years? Just taking a look deep dives, want to make sure O&M costs can be half the user cost, if not more. And want to make sure everything's there so that all of a sudden year one, okay, O&M costs were supposed to be $400 an EDU, and that they're not $700 or $800 an EDU because these things weren't looked at. So I want to take a look at that and make sure that everything's there that it should be. One other thing I looked at, the boring spacing where rock is encountered. Most of the boring spacing was adequate. It's that 500, 600, 700 foot range. But there's a few areas where rock's encountered where the next boring is over 1,000 feet away. And rock can be, in our experience, very variable between 2 points, especially 1,000 feet away. You might have rock 4 foot down here, 3 foot here, but in the middle, it could be 2 feet. And, that's one other thing I'd like to look at is how the rock was calculated. Did they do a neat line? I see on the plans, they show assumed bedrock profile. Looks like they just followed the topography. But in some of those points, it's probably valid to get another boring to see, okay, is that rock consistent throughout? Looking at the bid results, the rock bid item is the largest bid item you have. I think you had 14,700 cubic yards estimated. So it's over a $3 million line item. That rock can be very variable. We've had products, but we have tried to go back, and if you got rock here, rock there, let's make that estimate a little bit better. Let's refine it to make sure that we're not going to all of a sudden have 18,000 yards of rock removal. One other thing, kind of with the borings, you have some directional drills underneath roads, so you don't have to open cut the roads, which is great. But it only appeared in a couple crossings. There's only one boring on one side of the road. When a contractor looks at that, if it's going to be a directional drill in rock, he wants to know what's on the other side. Because if he's going to drill in rock, he doesn't want to pop out of the rock. If the rock drops off on the side and he's going to pop out during the middle of the road, that's something you don't want to have happen. So you want to have information on either side of the road, really close where he's going to be. Otherwise, it's potentially when a contractor looks at it, he's like, I don't know about this one. I'm going to put a higher cost in there just to keep me safe, because they're looking at, quantity of rock or the rock quality, the hardness, and everything else. The other thing, I guess, the alternate system, I know, want to see what we can do with the existing system, but on the alternate system, potentially, I just looked at the bid items, the low bidder, and it appeared that the step system septic tank cost was about twice the cost of a grinder pump. If you take that across all the users in the district, where there's over 300 EDUs, I think it's closer to 400. Just that difference there equates to about $3.6 million. Now, obviously, if you were going to look at a grinder system, there would be improvements that the wastewater facility had to be done. Now you got solids handling, you got to do a little more headworks. But if there truly is $3.6 million savings, 3.6 goes a long ways at the wastewater treatment facility. Just something I saw looking through it. As we move forward, I would take a deeper dive into that and see how that looks. The only other thing, I guess, in this, I've got a little detail on the right-hand side. I spoke to one of the contractors who were working on another project that bid on the project, and he mentioned the rock trench detail, that the pay limits are only 1 foot wide. And that's for 1.5-inch four-bane, 1.5-inch diameter force mains up to 3-inch. And he goes, Corey, we're going to do a rock saw, was our plan, and they're a 2 foot wide trench the rock saw cuts through. So he goes, I double my costs because I don't know anyone that has a 1 foot one in there. So I double my cost on that. And so that's just something another to look at. And separately from the cost of that is just the operation and maintenance. If you have to go back, let's say there's 3 foot of rock you cut in and it's only 1 foot wide. If you ever had to go back into that force main and do something, that's going to be extremely difficult to do anything. So that's just something to keep on the side.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding, but you're saying it would actually be cheaper to go with a wider trench for various reasons, but at least from this contractor.
From this contractor, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the other ones were planning on doing.
Yeah.
You can blast, you can hole ram, but typically with the amount of quantities you have and close to the homes, you're probably going to saw or something. But that's just feedback from one.
I just want to make sure I followed along.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And then, I heard too from a contractor, and I guess I didn't get into the specification too much, but I understand the Orenco system was specified. It said Orico, but from the contractor's perspective, he said pre-bid meeting, it sounded like they're only going to accept their Orenco system. So I had to sole source it from them is what got relayed back to me. Whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. That's just a conversation. But again, those are just a few things that popped to the surface. And, like I said, if you do a deeper dive, there'd be other things we take a look at to make sure you got functionality, life cycle costs, what other things we can do to, enhance competitiveness to try to bring costs down. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Matt to talk about the wastewater treatment.
Thanks, Corey. So transitioning from the collection system to the wastewater treatment plant, obviously there are 2 individual major components, but it's an entire system. So the team sitting in front of you and the team approach we're proposing is supposed to enhance that synergy when we consider them both individually, and then almost provide peer review and peer feedback of each other's thoughts on things, so that you're getting a broad and deep level of thought on each of these pieces of what your system will be. So transitioning to the wastewater plant, as you all know, I won't linger on the existing design, but it's a membrane bioreactor-based technology that is set to be installed on a parcel along Route 3 there. It consists of 3 buildings at grade in containers, and then 4 tanks to be buried below grade. And so the current design proposes to have all of that assembled and built off-site, brought to the site, and then the local contractor would connect it to site piping and site electrical, do some earthwork and some driveways and some walkways and such, and get it up and running. And so our understanding is that the DEC has issued a draft speedies permit, and that this MBR facility was selected based on the belief that it would satisfy those draft permit limits for the treated effluent prior to discharge of that treated effluent to Stony Brook. And so, do you have a question?
No, I'm
Did we
processing
have a draft
because,
permit?
no, I know we had a draft permit, but I wasn't, the affluent, that's okay, I'm learning, I apologize,
No,
thank
it's
you.
okay. So again, like Corey described, there are just in our initial review, there are 3 things that we kind of selected to highlight here, like a line of thinking about a few things that we noticed that we'd recommend for further investigation, further evaluation. The first one is this interplay between the selection of the STEP collection system and the wastewater plant as an MBR. And we see this throughout the basis of design reports and preliminary engineering reports and then the bid documents, this belief that because the STEP system provides some solids removal and called primary treatment at each parcel or at each user, it's going to reduce the cost of the wastewater plant, because the wastewater plant, when the flow arrives, that treatment will have already happened and you can go straight into the MBR. And when we look at the bid results and the bid documents, we don't quite see that borne out in the pricing that actually came in at bid. So we would recommend giving further thought to, is it really best that each current user and any future user that ties in to use this system be basically required to have a septic tank and an effluent pump on their parcel to be able to tie in? Or is it more cost effective overall, easier to operate and maintain, and more efficient to have that bit of treatment also taken care of at the centralized wastewater treatment plant location? The second thing is, like Corey mentioned with the Orenco for the collection system, the bid specifications around the wastewater plant, they pre-qualified the membrane bioreactor wastewater plant from a company called StreamGo. And so when you write a specification that pre-qualifies a certain piece of equipment, it's very challenging for any other provider of similar equipment to kind of get their foot in the door prior to the bid opening in a way that would potentially provide enhanced competition and lower bid pricing. On this sheet of the handout, we included a screen grab of what one of the containerized pieces of that MBR system looks like. And it kind of flows into our recommendation, which is, these systems are very, very tight. Like they're containerized, they're very small footprint, and the intent here, I think, is to own and operate this facility for current and future users into the future. And so, like Corey said, with the collection system, we recommend giving some additional thought to the selection of that MBR facility and ways that even if the town were to stick with MBR, ways that system could be configured to facilitate operation and maintenance, so that maintenance personnel trying to get into this container to replace components 5-10 years down the road, has the space to do what they're going to need to do in less time, in a less burdensome way. And then the third thing is taking a finer look at the site hydraulics and the site design of the wastewater treatment facility. Those 4 tanks, 2 aeration tanks, an equalization tank, and a sludge holding tank that are part of the core of the system are each shown on the bid documents to be built such that the floor of those tanks is about 20 feet below grade level. And so each of those tanks has, like pictured here in the section view, each of them has like a riser that you open a hatch. If you ever need to get into those tanks to replace aeration equipment at the bottom of them, someone would have to open a hatch and then go about 20 feet down into a confined space below grade. And it just raises certain issues related to safety and access and maintainability. And it's, frankly speaking, no one wants to go down there to do that. So our recommendation there would be to reconsider the site hydraulics for possible ways to avoid having to excavate all of that area to place those tanks so far below grade and have to shore that to protect the excavation during construction. And instead, hopefully find a way that you can locate those at grade to facilitate access to limits in the future. So, it's not to say that, again, we recognize there's been a lot of effort put forth so far, a lot of great effort. And none of what we're saying is a recommendation to start from scratch. It's just to provide, targeted effort to try to look at some things and move them in the right direction so that they're beneficial for the town on a cost effectiveness and O&M basis now and for future needs.
Thanks, Matt. I guess we'll turn it over to Eric to talk about 123.
Okay, thank you. So as the outline shows here, the first thing you want to do with these types of things is you need to look at whatever records are available, be it from the county or the town, to determine just what's supposed to be out there. That gives you a pretty good idea of what it should be, what may be wrong initially, and then when you go out and you do your site visit, you'll have a pretty good idea of, hey, it should be this, but I'm not seeing this. The other thing with the site visit is we would meet with the town representatives to go through, especially to outline any drainage problems, issues where you have people parking that aren't supposed to be parking, things of that nature. The local information that ties into the whole thing. Now, obviously, I'm seen it in my resume, I'm based out of Rochester. So having somebody not totally familiar with the area is a benefit, and that you can come in, you don't have any preconceived ideas. However, I do have a local connection. I was born and raised in Cape Vincent, so I do know the small communities, and I know the North Country. And actually, between my junior and senior year in college, I worked at Henson's Marina. So I was intrigued when Corey reached out to me with this. I said, oh yeah, it's been 40 years, but I do know a little bit of that area. So.
Yeah, seriously, probably is exactly the same.
Same pavement.
So anyways,
Same pavement, yeah.
the final aspect of, well, during the site visit, the other part I wanted to mention is that we would look at it from a safety standpoint, check, look at the curves, look for site issues, encroachments, which in my drive-through, there's probably a lot of them. The other is a pavement evaluation, just a quick pavement evaluation. And from my drive-through, there's some areas that are showing signs of some serious deterioration. There's some alligator cracking, which indicates that there's some subsurface something going on. It could be, we got some groundwater getting into the road base, or there's, could be a water main under there or something. I don't know. So anyways, we'll take all the information that we can glean and put it into the preliminary report. And the idea is to summarize all these things, summarize all the issues, summarize what we found out, develop some possible solutions to any issues or problems that we saw. Also identify any concerns with, trying to do something. For instance, you're right on the lake, obviously. Anything you do with drainage is going to be impacted by the proximity to the lake and DEC issues. So all of that will get summarized, put it in there, and of course, come up with some costs and try to project any costs out into the future. It's like, okay, here's the cost now, but if it takes 2 or 3 more years before funding or whatever comes into place, we can try to come up with, well, here's what it might be another 3-4 years out. The idea is to create this document to provide you with all the information you need to come up with whatever decision you need to make, be it, yeah, we'll take this on, or no, this is not a good idea. Whichever one it may be, the idea is to provide this information in one document for you to be able to make your decision. And some other preliminary assessment information was, yeah, it's narrow, pretty narrow road. There's no shoulders on the road. There's no, if you get pedestrians or bicyclists on there, there's not a whole lot of room for anybody to move around. The day I was out there, somebody was pouring concrete. It was quite a, okay, well, we gotta wait. And typical of those guys, there was nobody flagging. So you just kind of waited. There's not a lot of traffic, so you just wait and you go around, but it's very narrow. And that creates challenges with building it and maintaining it, as I'm sure you well know.
So as you can see, we've really each kind of spent our time working into our own section, but then also that cross collaboration, even in developing this proposal and even this presentation, having these conversations and kind of better understanding how one issue and one section of this process will inform the others, and ensuring that having kind of high-level project managers on each of the 3 sections, and then bringing their kind of findings and having those debates and discussions internally before it's even presented to the town, we feel is a benefit. to have that process already happened and then bring it to you for the next step. So, for your timeline, you have a tight 6-month window, but something we feel is approachable. Just to go over it, we would anticipate that, if we're meeting today, you'd want to start a kickoff meeting sometime in the month of August. That would be, all of our team, representatives from the town, representatives from the Development Authority, to start that field work, start that documentation review, gather any other information, kind of get more of the background context that maybe is missing in the documents themselves, and, other questions that we have that we saw through the document review. We would then move into a kind of progress report, technical workshop with, again, the town in mid-October, where we present early recommendations, kind of our preliminary feedback with the town, and have that really be a conversation. We see here even the fact that this is a public meeting now, we recognize that these are highly visible projects within the town, and we respect that, and we want to engage in whatever manner that made the most sense for the town. So if these were public meetings, then so be it, but we would really want to kind of hash these out. And all this to say is that this is not the only meetings we have. We'd have 7 meetings throughout the course of this proposal, and then internal, town project meetings, and then kind of those public meetings around it. So moving into November, we recognize that all of these projects require community engagement. That is the foundation to build trust, the communication that is happening both with the town through the consultants, but also the town to its representatives, its residents. Residents have been part of this process for much of the duration of the process you've been moving through the sewer district. So we would want to ensure that they felt they understood where we were in the project, what our preliminary findings were, answer any questions, kind of take that feedback, and give us time to be able to incorporate any of that feedback into those final reports, which would lead us into sometime mid-January. We'd have that final deliverable. We'd have those reports and recommendations. We'd want them again to be setting us up for the next step. We don't feel that a report just to have is the end product. We want a strategy moving forward. What are you doing with this report? Where is it going? What are the action items that are coming out of it? You're aligning yourself really well for a timeline for funding if needed for 2026. Having a project, having reports done and completed in January is kind of the ideal for any level of funding scenarios for a variety of different state and federal programs. So we would anticipate at that time, we would have that kind of action items with the report to say, all right, here's our recommended next steps, and here's not just pursue further funding opportunities, but here are the 3 funding opportunities, here are the timelines, here's what needs to be utilized for that, and really concise and actionable items that the town can move on and, get some progress, something in the ground. So I think that's pretty much our short presentation. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, and it sounds like there are questions that you have.
Sure, I'll get started. So can you tell me a little bit about how you develop and manage project schedules to ensure you stay on track?
Can you take that?
Sure. So obviously the biggest component of that is working with the municipality, like what's their schedule, they expect things to happen. And we feel setting that expectation day one starts on a good foot forward. And then checking base, not letting 2 months go by and checking in like, hey, we're at this level, we have this question, checking in regularly to make sure we have things going on. But we typically put together a little schedule, and we try to break out the items, not just all one lump sum. It's break it out as much as you can in enough detail, review it, and then stay on track. And then if we happen.
What software do you use for that?
We have some
Program
software,
or-
but probably what we typically have used in the past is we use Excel program on it. Unless it gets a huge project, then we do have some software computing that can do that. But I feel some of those reports get very detailed, and there's just a lot of lines in there, and it can get confusing looking at it. So a lot of times what we present is just a basic Excel spreadsheet, break it out with dates and times.
Okay. How about budgeting? So staying on budget, communicating with us about budget. How do you plan on doing that?
So we are always working with other municipalities to try to gauge what's the trend, what's happening. You know, when COVID happened, what's the pricing going on? We're checking with manufacturers, what's the pipe price? Did it go up $5? Did it go up $6? You know, a lot of our items too will have other products that bid out that year. We'll use the average of 3 low bidders. Okay, what's the average price here? What do we see? You know, there's differences. If you try to extrapolate a small project where the cost might be up into a large project, it doesn't always work that way or vice versa. So you want to make sure it's similar products you're comparing to. We have very good relations with contractors. You know, we'll reach out and say, hey, you know, we've got this project. You know, they're looking not only at installing, but how tight is it? What's the neighborhood? Is there things in the way? Is there other utilities? Is there gas? Is there fiber that's going to hold things up? So we try to have all those conversations to make sure that the budget we put together is solid. And one of the big things that we try to do that EFC promotes is that during preliminary, you know, if we were starting brand new with a project, have a 35% contingency. They allow it. You know, as you develop the project and you get closer to design, then you can reduce that. But starting off, you know, have a large contingency with that so you can, you know, things happen along the way.
Lindsay, just to clarify, were you talking about a construction budget or the report budget for this?
I was talking about the, kind of both, just in general, like, I think you answered my question.
Okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say, a report budget would be, you know, lump sum, it is what it is. There's not any wiggle room there, so.
Correct. So I'm gonna keep going unless someone else wants to jump in. So you talked a little bit about public outreach, trust. You know, this project was going on for a long time. There has been some trust issues with the public. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen ever again. So can you talk a little bit about your approach to how you would engage the public?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've worked on a lot of projects that were controversial for some form or function. Most recently, we worked with the town of Clay developing Micron land use study, very controversial land use issues down there. But that's inherent to any kind of public process. Change is hard. Change is going to be a little scary if you're not aware of it. So part of this is to really bring the information as early and as often as you can. You know, have things up to date on your website. We can provide materials to provide, you know, give you that, but also set milestones that the town can anticipate. Maybe it's, you know, not at a town board meeting, but maybe it's at a separate town workshop that you're presenting updates and we could be there to discuss any concerns that people have. It really comes down to consistency with communication. If you are a reliable source of information that you are continually and openly giving, which I feel that these processes are public, these are taxpayer dollars that are funding all of this work right here. It is apparently needs to be a transparent process. So we build that into every step of the way. Obviously, there'd be things that we would want to talk with the town board or town representatives and the development authority before they go public, you know, but I do think that there would need to be a strategy that we would present in the beginning, and that's what we included within our schedule, at least one public workshop to ensure that, and early enough in the process, because oftentimes people do have comments or that local context or understanding are things we do want to have enough time to be able to pull into our analysis and make sure that we can give ourselves that. So it's not just that final presentation. That's obviously something that's going to happen as well, but you really need to have those checkpoints. And, you know, as much as the town would be comfortable with having these processes happen more publicly, we would be very, very for that.
Okay, great. So in review of I think you hit some of them, but just the challenges associated with this project in particular, what do you think the biggest ones are?
Matt, do you want to jump in?
Sure, I could start. I think you have in today's day and age with prices rising, you know, annually and even more often than that, trying to build public sewer or public water for that matter in a kind of a distributed area is just challenging. It's challenging to find the right system. There's no magic bullet that is going to be, you know, magically cheaper than the other option. And it's really about making sure that the initial decisions made, you know, and that become like key decision points along the way are really closely considered before you make that decision and then move along one direction, you know, fork in the road, so to speak. So in the context of this project, and at one point or another, decisions were made to pursue a step collection system in an MBR wastewater plant. And then from there, you design it the best you can using those technologies, and the bid documents are developed accordingly. But I think the most meaningful challenge is identifying and bringing all the voices into the room to make sure at those key decision points, you're making the right decision for the community that's going to keep you on track to something that's affordable at the end of the project.
Dave, do you want to go? I don't want to take up all.
Sure, the question I had was, what's your internal review process? When you engineer a system or you do an analysis, everybody makes mistakes, humans make mistakes. So what kind of process do you have that you can identify that within your own organization?
Yeah, I can speak on our behalf. So we have quality assurance, quality control people that, and we try to have those people that are not involved with the project, so they're looking at a fresh perspective. We have wastewater operator that is on our staff, always a good source because he comes from experience on that. But we try to have multiple reviews on that. As well, we offer inspectors out in the field that see stuff every day. So if they see something like, why is this alignment going this way? There's more trees, there's more obstacles, come this way. It's a clear path. So we try to do both of those to get different perspectives for people that are out in the field and the people that have actually done wastewater treatment before. And send it around markups, and then we'll sit down together and talk holistically about, okay, I saw this, I saw that, and collectively as a group, take a look and say, okay, that makes sense.
I would add from Labella's perspective, I'm here representing Labella this evening, but our quality assurance process for this project in tandem with Popely and VCA has already begun. We've had the stuff I'm describing related to the wastewater treatment plant, design observations and technical input. I'm one of 4 senior engineers who have given these reviews, given these documents and the packages provided a review already. So I'm the messenger, just to let you know that quality assurance process starts from initial proposal development and will continue through final deliverable.
So I think I'm grasping that I'm working with 3 aspects of one company. So how does that tie back to us that only really wants to work with a person that's tying in all of our information and getting it back to us in a concise and detailed way, so we're not feeling fragmented in the process?
That's a great question, Karen, and one that we did think about, because the last thing we want to do is say, overwhelm you and say, hey, we have 3 separate opinions of thought that you have to put together, and you have to weave together as, different voices and different approaches and different report fields and different, even table of contents organizations. So what you're going to get from us is a one firm approach, and that will come from VCA. We will be the cat herders on the inside to manage all of the different reports, the timelines, manage those timelines so there's not different timelines. You're not getting separate emails from different people on the team at different times. You're going to get kind of one packaged approach. You're going to get one bill, one invoice, one report. It will feel to your end seamless in terms of how this works. And we've all been partners on other projects already. And that's something that, this wouldn't be our first time doing this. And
But you are 3 companies.
we are 3
Yeah, it's not
separate
just one company
companies.
with 3 parts, it's 3 companies.
Yes, but to the end user, i.e. you'll feel that is one, and we're all on the same, we all work for the same company. And for this project, we work for you.
And you felt an advantage because you have a huge amount of expertise as a result of that.
Yeah, it's typically with, when you have one firm, you have kind of that top-down approach where you have a senior project manager and then you have junior people that work underneath. And so there's oftentimes the information is kind of going down and there's not that kind of, cross-pollination of other opinions because the people underneath the project manager are more junior. So they're obviously going to, I'm sure there's going to be some discussion, but not in the same level of having 3 equals kind of hash out kind of the findings internally before they're presented to the town. So that's the other kind of final QA/QC that you would see in this process would be that last step is the internal QA/QC and then this team's QA/QC before we send anything. Obviously, none of the stuff that you've seen in either proposal or the presentation today is new information for any of us out here. So we already are running through this as a group and we're already kind of saying, oh, okay, well, that might mean that, like to what Corey was saying earlier, like this might inform another portion of the collection system. The collection system might inform a change at the treatment plant. So we're already navigating that. So I would assure you that our strategy is BCA is the one you contract with, and then you get under that suite of services, the additional weight and heft of Popley and Lavella, but you're still interfacing with BCA directly.
Okay, thank you.
Corey, or do you guys want to talk about how your BCA stands client relations? Like, I know what you guys typically do with your clients as far as monthly. You want to talk about what that usual communication path is, Corey?
Yeah. So obviously we work for a lot of North Country municipalities. And so when we take on a project, we're in conversations weekly, most of the time when an active project is going on. And always available by phone calls. We're attending board meetings. If the village or town wants us there, we're always there for board meetings, public meetings. We want to make sure we're there for anything that municipality needs us there for. And we take that approach because it down to the end, we want a great project. And a lot of that comes down to public, their perceptions of it, how they feel. Is the grass growing? Last thing they see is it my green? Is my grass green? But we try to take that extra step with everyone to make sure that we're doing everything right, public's good, and just the communication, I think, is key. If we're not communicating, then there's something not being done right.
There should be no surprises.
Right.
And this you think that the town would have to face on their own without some level of conversation or discussion. Sorry.
Did that answer your question, Thomas, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I go through August to January, which there's marks we're gonna make in every month. So we're expecting that at the minimum every month, not only will we talk several times during the month, but we're gonna get a summary of where we are in August and where are we in September. Okay, and I think you're from Rochester? Okay, so when we're talking to Jefferson County about 123, who's talking to Jefferson County about 123? Are you talking to Jefferson County about 120? Because that's going to take some information gathering to figure out how we're going to work that, right? Because we got to be able to talk to the county administrator and the highway guy, and what are we tying all this into?
Yep. So it's probably going to be a combination. If we're talking with Jimmy Lawrence, the county or something.
Didn't he retire
Not yet.
Not yet.
this year though, right?
About a month.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
He's got about a month left.
That's what I thought. The last time I talked to him.
You'll be talking
The new guy, who's not new, not new.
He will be.
Yeah, he will be the new highway guy.
Those conversations, it's probably going to be both of us, because we're intertwined together. So it's going to be Eric, it's going to be myself, talking with the county on that. And I think that's the best approach. I always want to be known what's going on, and Eric, being the transportation person that he is, he has the knowledge to ask those questions, but I'm there as well to make sure that I can grab that information. I'm on top of it. I want to be the full collector, knowing what's going on, so that if someone from the town calls me as the point of contact, I want to say, yes, we had the meeting, this went over. So that's how I'd approach that it'd be a dual reach out from us.
I wasn't minimizing your importance.
No.
I'm looking at the dynamics that
Right.
happen in small communities versus
Yes, and the
larger
other part of it,
communities.
yes, I'm based in Rochester. Tonight after this meeting, I'm going to my place in Cape Vincent. So when we plan these things, I'll be able to be here. We'll plan several things for the week. I'll say, yep, I'm gonna be up there for the week, and we'll do this and this and this and this. We'll meet, and set it all up. As Corey said, having worked at Popley now for 7 years, the primary effort we have is as a subconsultant. This is nothing unusual that we do. I've worked with Bella.
You have
I've
5
worked
minutes
with-
remaining in the conference.
Nell was here
Thank you.
earlier. I've worked with them as well as a sub. And it's not an unusual occurrence. The primary in this case is gonna be BCA. Everything I do goes through them, deal with them. If there's direct questions, we can talk directly. It's not that unusual.
Thank you. Anything else?
Just while you're on that, I guess, a little bit in your own words, I want to hear, what do you envision that your portion of the report looking like? So we have this document, I mean, describe it in the sense of.
Well, there'll be, all right, so I could see the appendices. Let's start with that. You're gonna have, there'll be a brief pavement evaluation, an assessment of what's the existing pavement conditions? You know, what are the widths? In my drive-through, remember, there's almost like at least 3 separate type of sections where on the southern end, it's much more open, right? There's a lot of grass on the outside, and then you get in to the heart of it there by Henson's, and there's a lot of parking right up tight to it and all this. Then you get to the northern end where the homes are right up tight to it. So there's 3 different areas. So we go through all of that. We do a safety assessment, which is, again, it's a drive-through. You take some looks at things, you do some measuring, and maybe look at, are there sightline issues? There's a couple of them. But again, your speed limit is slow, so it isn't that big a deal. But you look at all of these things. I've already looked at the accidents that are available. I think there were 10. 3 of them were deer hits. 3 of them were backing out of a parking lot. So it's nothing unusual, nothing to indicate that there's geometrics that are going to be a problem. That wouldn't be another appendices that we would attach on. Then you would summarize these things and then also have, well, here's what you might want to consider. If you're going to take this over, this is what the road needs. This is the idea. Go up, what do you need? Well, it needs, this is not what it needs necessarily, but just off the top of my head. It needs to be reconstructed because the pavement's just shot. It needs all new drainage. It needs, a drainage collection system, not just new cross culverts. I don't know if any of that is true. But that's what we would, I try to identify things of that nature, and then, well, here's what you could do to improve the situation. And then with that, here's how much could anticipate it might cost. So it's gonna be, it's like a separate document. I think that's what we're envisioning.
It's gonna be the EFC template, yep, it follows.
A little standalone document. This is the highway analysis part of it. That's what we're envisioning.
And that document could then be used for funding. That is the basis to apply for additional funding. But it's also the document that, you could use as a conversation continuer with the county to say, here's the real cost based on this analysis, versus what was proposed, and have that conversation be ongoing and now have it be really data analysis driven rather than a quote from the county.
And we've already spent some time with their highway superintendent, the other Corey, as I'll call him, going over some of his drainage issues, that he has throughout there. I know, plowing has been an issue too, because everything's so tight when you put the wings down and whatnot. So we've got some of that. Obviously, moving forward, we want to sit down again and go over those items, but I have some background.
Anything else, Thomas, that we missed?
I don't believe so. I think we covered all of my notes, so.
Everybody good?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Everybody good? Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate very much.
No, we really appreciate the opportunity, and we'd love the opportunity to work with you, so.
I appreciate it. Our plan is to review this in the next week or so and then certainly get back. We have a meeting next week. If we're lucky enough, we'll be able to have a decision by then and we'll get back to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels to Cape.
Thank you.
Watch out for deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's light enough. Yeah. It should be good.
Not around here.
Well, she said she just. Do you want to go to the executive session?
No.
We're not allowed to. We can just talk about public, correct? Okay, that's fine.
We'll discuss it in public. We're talking about.
Thanks,
All right.
guys. Appreciate it.
Fine.
Thanks.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
Thank you, appreciate it. Preliminary feedback? We can.
do you want to do some preliminary feedback now for a little bit, or do you guys on the way out the door?
I can stay as long as you need to.
I think we can be relatively quick.
Yeah, I just think as long as it's fresh, we can kind of discuss and see where some of our pros and cons are, and
Will that be in public, or, I mean, it seems like,
Public.
is it? We're gonna talk about feedback in
well,
public?
it's about the proposal. It's about the work that they're going to do, not the people.
Wasn't about the
Correct.
companies though, when that,
To the extent that, I mean, is Johnson on the phone?
No, he's gone.
I don't want to talk, I mean, to the extent that the five of us are going to talk about this together, it doesn't seem like it's executive material to me. And even if it is, what are we trying to hide? They're not our employees. They're not,
Yep.
it's not our contract. You know, I mean, it's not a union
The
contract. It's a
proposal said nothing is
proprietary. Yeah.
proprietary, correct?
No, nothing
Correct, Taylor? Yeah, so we have the ability, I mean, yes, I mean, one's gonna present different than the other, but I think that's the strengths and weaknesses that we need to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I got, Thomas, that might be only me, but they looked as though they were presenting vastly different. I thought Barton looked as though they were doing the entire project, and I thought BC was looking at summarizing where we are and presenting back. Am I making myself did that come across to anybody else?
I mean, they gave, BCA did give examples in the beginning, right? They gave examples of things they would do differently, like the.
But Barton was into meeting with our community and
Oh, yeah.
really getting into
Trying to look
project
out of
where
the
it really
box
isn't the
and different
RFP,
things.
right? The RFP.
that wasn't part of the RFP, so to speak.
Did though.
I didn't say you didn't like it. I said it's not the RFP.
Yeah, I mean, the RFP requested, the first was a review and what the existing design is, provide recommendations associated with that to try to, if we're gonna stay with this, the current design, what improvements they would make, which is what, the second talk about, like the borings and items along. That's what they were highlighting on. The second piece of it is focused on, alternatives associated with, what different design options are there, which was definitely more highlighted in the first presentation as opposed to the second one. And then, obviously the kind of Group 123 portion of it. I would say, the deliverables and the agreements for either firm, we're gonna have the same, like this is what the expectations are. I think that part of it is just what they chose to highlight in the presentation.
There's nothing that requires them to stick to that exact script, right? They can highlight other points of operational excellence if they so choose. Is that, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm hearing from you on the baseline is they both met the marks of answering it adequately.
Yep.
Right? I mean, some elements might be more comprehensive with BNL or with BCNA.
Yeah,
or something,
and then
but-
some of them might really, both of them, if you review the proposals side by side, they chose to elaborate more on different
Yeah.
aspects of it. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do what you ask of them, is because, the deliverable is clear, like the deliverable that's in there, they both acknowledge these are the three deliverables that are coming out of it. But it's their path forward that they chose to highlight for it. At this point, it's the sales meetings, the pitch for them to, why we're the best and when this is what our approach is gonna be.
Just overall, strategy-wise, they're completely different, right? We had one big company that could do everything, and the other approach was subcontract. So in your experience, which typically works better? What have you seen?
We've had.
He's worked with both.
Yeah.
But they're equally successful?
Correct.
Okay.
Does the public have any comments? I think if we have the time, do you have any concerns, questions?
You said we couldn't talk.
Well, I'm saying, we're taking some extra time. We thought we were gonna go longer. So my question is, do you have anything significant that's concerning for us as we go through this process?
Well, in the past, they did not hit the benchmarks. When things were asked, they didn't come and present. Are they going to, the first firm said they would come to every board meeting, they would report to you. And they didn't specifically say, but I assume there wouldn't be a charge for that, because in the past, there was a charge for coming to each
They actually
board
said they
meeting.
wouldn't charge.
The RFP is one price, correct? So this is out for a price, and I think they both
Okay.
alluded to this. So they're not billing us per hour per project.
Lump sum deal. There
Lump
it is.
sum deal.
Tell me
This
what
is
they're
what,
offering.
this is what we're getting. This is what we're
No,
getting.
it was, yeah, so it's not put out as a unit price item, it is, there's a lump sum deliverable there, and there's 3 different deliverables, so in kind of the agreement, they'll be broken down into those 3 items.
I think he
Part of that is alluding to, is like, what they were discussing is their client relationship, and that's how they value, in the end, the town is their client, how they manage their client with these projects.
I had assumed with the first company, when he said on that chart, that he was looking at the whole picture. I didn't
It's
assume,
incorporated, no, it's
I
not
did
on
not
top,
assume
right?
it
It's
was just for
incorporated
the
in yeah.
RFP. I assumed it was
I took
for
that same.
the duration.
Yes.
That was my interpretation. I don't know if but that was
That
my
was mine as well.
interpretation.
They definitely talked about the project for the next 2 years, not necessarily just
Just the RFP.
the RFP.
I think the board need to have more specifics that they present to you. How are they going to show the schedule? Oh, we have schedule, we don't use a program, we're kind of vagued out. But you need to know what they are going to give you.
Well, and neither
They're
one
going to give
uses
you a
like
Gantt
project
chart.
or
They're
anything.
going to give you a CPM.
Oh, he's the one
whatever
that
system
uses
they
Gantt
use, so
charts.
you can evaluate. And then also the pricing, how are they going to estimate? Part of the first flounder was when the price was never really established until it was already bid. Where there was no secondary review which projected a probable price based on standards in the industry, based on pricing that is available through services. So one may be a very good company, but if they don't have a price for you, you don't really know what they're thinking and how you're gonna end up with a project that you can do. Getting a design and then finding you can't pay for it, doesn't help anything.
One of the pieces that we have now that we didn't have, at least as a community, we didn't have a year and a half ago. Number 1 is we have lots of communication, and number 2, we have DANK. So what DANK is doing a lot of the things when they're working, they're not just working with us as a board that are not specialists. They're working with these guys. So these guys are gonna push the outcome. So when we get it from Barden or we get it from BCA, Thomas and Taylor will have already worked with them, reviewed it, and made sure that the details we're looking for are very specific. So I think we're looking for people that we think have the passion and looking for what we're looking for, and depending on these guys to make sure we're watching the numbers.
He's gonna filter it out.
They're gonna filter it.
Sure.
Yep.
I think all of the
that correct?
deliverables all really clearly say, and if you read the proposals, they talk about project estimates for both the capital cost for building it and the O&M, and they're gonna have the right, and they'll list it, having looked at what these are from both firms, I know what they're gonna look like. They're both very clear in what assumption that they're gonna make as far as downs. Where we are in this year, they will likely list that this is assumed in 2026 dollars. For future, they'll factor in what the estimated inflation is, they're gonna list it and tell you what that is. Granted, crazy things happen and inflation goes 10 or 15%, but at least that baseline will be is going to be out there at the completion of this.
I look at this as being helpful for DANK, because one of the things when we hired DANK, they couldn't work directly, they couldn't do the engineering work. They could get it back and then they can assess it and they can give it to us, but that's not their role to do the work. So I'm looking for either one of these firms to look at giving us those, exactly what you asked for, the specifications, the pricing, the best project, and then be able to come back and present at board meetings. And I'm sure Thomas and Taylor, one of them, expect to be at the meeting with whomever we're working with. So it's filtered prior to getting to us. Am I right, you guys?
Who will have decision authority for change orders,
This comes back to the town, like,
As
as
a
a town
board.
board.
The town will.
Yeah, the agreement with these firms is with the town, it is not with the development authority, and that's like, even if you think some of my answers are vague, the reason is because I, as the authority, am not making the decision for the town. I had a list of kind of some of the technical questions or items I wanted to highlight that make sure that they hit on. And both of them did hit on those, because I have their proposal, their approach proposals here with highlights of things I wanted to make sure got brought up. But it is with the town, so if there's any amendments or change orders that come, the process is they do come to us first, and I'll talk about it with the consultant of, hey, I think this, okay, I agree, or are you really sure that you wanna ask for that much money? And then at that point, it does come forward to the town board to kind of review at that point, but there's no, the blanket, the final sign off is with the board in an open session.
I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page here, though. We're not talking about change orders during the construction project, we're talking about change orders during the scope of drafting an engineering report that.
So the only, in my experience with this, the only, at this point, with what they're asking, there shouldn't be any. The only things that have come up in the past, and most of the time, it's when there's a study grant that's been awarded. The town doesn't have a study grant, or their engineering planning grants is what they're called. You have to spend all the money to get all the money type situation. We're not in the case right now. Most of the time what comes up is we wanna do soil borings, or we wanna do, hey, like there's this tricky area of the project, we get some field survey done. Items that you wouldn't expect. With where the town is, like, well, the one firm mentioned, it would be additional soil borings, that would be an item of how to improve the project. At this point, wouldn't recommend going out and doing it. They're not saying that they wanna go do more, that is what they would do to kind of improve the project moving forward.
Thomas, we put a price out for the RFP, correct?
Yeah.
So the price is established, they're both predicting, we don't know what the price is
Yeah,
because,
so unfortunately, with the way the Environmental Facilities Corporation and the federal requirements are, there's a form, the A&E procurement form, we talked about this in some of the prior meetings, where the process is you solicit these proposals, you interview at least 3 of them, and then you negotiate a price. What the authority has done is they submit their pricing proposals separately that are not reviewed until the town kind of makes the decision on who they would like, and then that way the number is there for negotiations at that point. Because the way kind of looking at it is, you look at the firms, you say, okay, we're gonna pick you. At that point, they know that's who they wanna work with, and they might be inflated. Well, this way, price point is set, allows you kind of open book of.
if we put the RFP out for a particular price, is there a reason that they wouldn't both come in with the same?
There's not a particular, they're
There
not
wasn't for
locked
an
into a
RFP?
price.
I thought,
That's what I was gonna ask. Is there a price out there? for
Yeah,
this?
they've established what their lump sum fee.
we haven't got it yet.
And are these the only 2 firms that responded?
Yes.
So there
It's a
wasn't 3 firms.
Correct.
So what does that mean?
If you put it out that, like, it doesn't mean, the town did their due diligence. Basically, there's a form that the town was gonna have to sign saying that we did our due diligence, and you can say that they legally did. The town is in a unique position. If this was clear, we're starting from scratch, you would ended up with 5 or 6 different proposals. But with where it is, not every firm,
Is comfortable
Taking
because
on-
there's.
because of the history, and where they're at, not every firm is willing to take that on.
So we would anticipate when we're through with this study in January, remember that then we'll come up with an RFP to do the engineering implementing, or will we use the firm that we've already used? There's
That's your
Is it our,
Like, that's your choice.
Okay.
In general, you're tying yourself for.
to this, to whatever company we pick?
It'd be advantageous, I would imagine, to stick with that.
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah, because the new firm would have to get up to speed and.
This was very refreshing because this should have been done a long time ago.
Can't go back, Ginger.
I know, but going forward, that's why, including the public and even you talking now, that was never allowed. There was no feedback from the public, there was no inclusion of the public.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure how much the board members shared prior to this, and I'm not defending or finding fault with anybody, but I think a lot of the stuff that I worked with, they didn't get access to. So I'm not saying how it happened or where it happened, so it definitely is a group that we communicate all the
All the
time.
time.
And, I do my best. Sometimes I get a notice out late or I forget to call Tori, but we do our best to make sure we share all the information equally.
Well, just keep in mind, not everybody has Facebook.
I know, we do the best.
website is terrible. It needs,
We know that.
and I myself cannot get the calendar to come up. Or I don't get any special notices or anything like that. It could be me, but just be aware that there are people that aren't aware of this stuff. I know you're trying, it's better than it was, but still, it's like, I think there would have been more people here tonight if it would have been better communicated.
Okay,
Okay?
point taken.
I would like to see, a little bit discussion about water,
About what?
about water being,
The water lines.
water lines, not necessarily the whole system put in, but at least while the road's torn up, looking into those avenues. I know it's a
Yeah, so,
lot, I don't think it'd be separatable at all.
yeah, no, and well, it's not even just,
Just we.
it's not even the separation distance, so I'll say, no. We have just, it has been discussed, like the town has brought it up, and then even in some of the meetings, we know that the need for water is there. The problem is that makes it challenging for that is unless you have like a existing system, the only time I've ever seen it work where you replace both of them at the same time is in like a DOT betterment project where both of those are already there. To try to get a project aligned to have that occur at the same time is very, very challenging. Even if you were to start both of them at the same time, it's almost next to impossible. The reason being is because of the funding agencies, you have to do them as two separate projects. You have to submit them separately, and more often than not, they don't get the funding at the same time. Now, what
I'm
I
with you, I'd like
say-
water too, but,
The less.
well, you can't put them in the same lines anyway.
No, I know that,
But then-
but you're tearing up the road once
Oh.
rather than tearing it up.
So what could be done is, during the discussion, most of the time, you end up with it on sewers on one side, the water's on the other. You dig up to one side and you end up with a kind of a lane repair on that side. So if it's on the right side of the road, that side of the road will get repaired. And when the water comes to, it'll be on the other side and it will get repaired. I'm assuming you're talking about 123, and if what could be done is during, and this is maybe something to bring up during the kickoff meeting, so whoever you select of, when doing the review, building the road in a way where, okay, we know that there's like we long-term would like to put water down here, not set it up so it's impossible to do that. So when it does come through, it's okay, we know we're gonna wanna put the water on the right side of the road, design the drainage structures and items like that. So maybe you could snake by and do the least amount of disturbance. I mean, similar to what one gentleman said is, it always looks like a bomb went off during the middle of it. But to try to, maybe pre-plan if that's the route that ends up coming about, then, putting that out there as a talking point of like, hey, we know that eventually we might wanna put water down there. What it might mean is you might put the sewer in You might have to make some concessions to the sewer where it's a little more challenging now, but you're not totally rejecting yourself from water in the future, making an extremely difficult situation in the future. Cause I've run into those where, there isn't the forethought 15 years prior, you put the sewer in, and then it comes down time and put the water, and you end up crossing it 3 different times because there was no discussion about that.
And half the road already does have water. So they're gonna have to work around that with the sewer, so it's half from the Gill House that is already got water. So it's like when he said, think outside the box. That's thinking outside the box and forward thinking.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you very much. We appreciate that you came. Do you want us to do this before we leave?
We
Is
give that
everybody
as a
comfortable?
template for how you guys utilize,
So we could just give them to him, or then he'll score them?
I'll fill it out tonight or something. I'm not gonna.
no, yeah,
Okay.
that's a tool for you guys to make your decision. Yeah.
One other quick
You want
question.
this as far as.
You don't
You
want
need
it,
it for documentation, or is it just to help us?
To help you,
Oh, so you don't need them. You just,
You don't need them. Have you guys been able to read all of the data that he compiled on the survey results?
you mean the individual comments and stuff?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, yeah. All right, we need a motion. I need to record it for Wendy.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Thank you.
And Tony. Okay.
Just so that we know.
Still on live and not every.